Hello, everybody. It's David Eisner. The date is Thursday, June 27th, 1:49 Pacific time, and I'm just coming to you with a Bitcoin bloodbath report. I just thought it would be good to kind of just go over this market right now in the light of what has gone down in the past day, and just to kind of put all of this into perspective, and just take a look about what we might expect from Bitcoin going forward. Now, I'm looking at the weekly here. First things first. Let's look at the monthly, right? And this is just Gemini, so they don't have like the most history or whatever, but still we're in a trading range here, right? And you can see that we're not in that trending market like we were back in 2017, but we haven't confirmed any kind of bear trend off of this on the monthly. We haven't come back down, and really there were other highs back here around 1200. We haven't even tested those, so still long term bull in my opinion for Bitcoin. Now the much better chart to look at, much more informative, is the weekly, which is what I started on here, and you can see we've just had this massive run up. This is the true definition of too far too fast, and a very dangerous market, because who's buying up here? Like, seriously, we have to ask ourselves that question. And it's not the institutions, it's not the professional traders, it's the retail public that is FOMO buying, because they're like, uh-oh, if I don't get in here at 13, almost 14,000, then it's going to go to 100,000 without me, right? And we just have to stop ourselves from ever doing such a thing, right? Even with this W breakout, obviously right here was the time to get in. You could have gone in on this consolidation, but even this did not provide a very big pullback. This provided a pullback. We didn't even get a pullback here. If I do a fib off of this, I'm gonna have to change the fib here. If it's gonna let me. I think I'll just go down here. Am I getting a little bit of slowness on this? For some reason, I'm gonna have to refresh my chart here. I think it's the problem. Okay, yeah, I just needed to refresh my chart with TradingView. That happens sometimes. All right, so if we look at this fib, you can see from here, it didn't even provide us a test of 38.2. All right, and then we just went screaming up. So what can we look at going forward? And the question that I'm sure most people are asking is just like, where can I be a buyer of Bitcoins, right? And it looks that like we have a reload zone inside of the larger reload zone. You can see I've got that one with the peak over here around 20,000, and then of this large range on the weekly, showing a reload zone in between 7,800 and about 5,400, somewhere in that range. So if you want to be a long-term buyer of Bitcoins, you could have been a buyer anywhere over here, right? You could have been a buyer down here or up here, but not over here, right? Like, this is where you absolutely cannot be a buyer of Bitcoins. And now we have to be looking at the reload zone inside this reload zone. So really we have 72.81 down to 54.78, and below. And you could go below and set some of your bids below. But if you wanted to be realistic, I mean, look, you have my magic line for Bitcoin, which is the 19 SMA on the weekly. That is down right now at about 6,400, sitting right in the sweet spot of the larger reload zone of this big move and the reload zone of this move. So if we come back down here, you bet that I'm going to be having at least one of my bids set around here. and that's for longer term investment, right? Looking at the whether or not we're actually going to break down here, there's a couple of key things to look at. If we blow up the MACD, we don't necessarily have a divergence on the weekly here. So we are still trending up in momentum, and that is a little bit concerning, even though we had this like let's call it a $3,000 drop, somewhere in that range. You can see that on the weekly we still haven't broken down, and we still again have not tested 38.2 on this range, right? Let me pull this out a little bit more. We can see it. You can see that 38.2 is sitting here at 98.32. So again, even though we might print like some kind of massive shooting star here, if we kind of stay around this level through the weekend, through Sunday, and do print over here, that will print a massive shooting star. So that is a very bearish signal as far as candlestick patterns are concerned. So be careful, but I've been saying be careful for a long time. And even this move up was a pretty fast move. These moves up were extremely fast move, right? We did put in this empire, or, it's a bit of a sloppy empire, but it's an empire nonetheless. It didn't come down to 38.2, and we just kept rallying. This is nosebleed. Like, this is just total nosebleed. Don't get caught up here, right? So we just have to be patient. You have to think about it like this, right? When we're sitting up top here at 20,000, what is everybody thinking? They're thinking, oh, Bitcoin's going to the moon. The psychology is that the trend will continue. I think that it's like built inside of us to think whatever trend is happening, that's the trend that's going to continue. And, there weren't that many people saying, okay, let's start looking at this $4,500 area when this starts to break down. Even when this is sitting up here at 15,000, 16,000, you start saying 4,500, a lot of people will say that that's never going to happen. It's kind of like you talk to people about the real estate market and you say, well, I'm going to just wait for like a 60-70% dip. They'll be like, that's never going to happen. But in some markets it did happen in 2007, 2008, 2009, right? Or I think the market kind of took a couple of years to kind of come down after that. But basically that's what we got to be thinking now. Not necessarily that it will happen, but where we can be risk-averse buyers of Bitcoin, right? So we have to calm down into this zone to be like, all right, this is where I'm going to be comfortable buying. Now, if this was in fact the top, what can we expect on a time scale is kind of important to figure out, right? So if we say, all right, well, here we had the bottom and here we had the top, that was 28 bars. So where can we expect to move down to the 50%? Let's see. I need that again. All right, here we go. Over here. Okay, so that brings us out to, wait, I've got to blow this up real quick. Sorry. There we go. To basically end of September. Okay? And, so we could see something like a bounce up maybe, and then, something like this. Right? Can't go backwards. Sorry, bad drawing alert. Just something like that, right? Could be in store for us, and then maybe towards the end of the year, we could dip down into this. And I actually, this is interesting because we are coming in on a Litecoin halving, and when we saw this move coming in on Litecoin. We knew that it was a lot of the buy the rumor, sell the news could have been the situation, right? So, but we just got to play the markets and what they give us, right? And you got to be thinking, you got to be looking at this weekly chart and thinking, all right, well, if we come back down here in the next 14 to 20 weeks or something like that, I've got, if I want to be a long-term buyer of Bitcoins, this is where I've got to be looking at reload zone inside of reload zone. All right. Let's just drill down to the daily a little bit and see what we're dealing with over here. Obviously, that is some kind of ridiculous move. It's not technically an engulfing bar because we're not above here, and we also haven't closed it, right? But we're taking into account like 4 days of trading, basically completely wiped out. And you know, when I wake up in the morning yesterday and I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh my god, Bitcoin's up another $1,000. I'm like, the only thing I can put out to my members is, you know, be fucking careful, guys. You know, like, don't be a buyer up here. Like, if I teach you one thing, it's like, just be patient and come back. You know, like, wait for this market to like cool down. Now we still haven't tested 38.2. We still haven't crossed over or moving averages. MACD hasn't completely broken down here. What we do have is overbought signals, but you know, does that mean everything? No. But you know, we had one over here. We got a pullback and then we moved higher, right? We got a big one over here. We had a little pullback and then moved higher. We got a pullback on this one and then moved higher. So could we see a pullback here and then a move higher? Yeah, absolutely. We could. If I zoom out a little bit to look at the volume profile, though, you can see we are way above value here. We really are looking to come back and test. I should probably get some more data in here. Kind of zoom out. I don't know if I want that much data. Something like that. You can see we've done a lot of business down here, and we're probably going to see some support this whole area down at 6,500. So realistically, if you want to be a buyer of Bitcoins, you know, this is where you might be looking. But again, this is still above value. I could definitely see us visiting this $5,500 range to come into value. If we accept back down into that, then, you know, I wouldn't be surprised even to test these lows or to at least meet this level of resistance down here at 3,500. But on the daily, you know, again, like, this is still fucking bullish, guys. Like, where's this trend? Can't really think this was from my weekly thing. So you can see it's still bullish trend up from here. So we don't have that MACD divergence. You know, we're looking at, this is the domino. We still have a domino score of 10. So there's no real indication that we should be like, you know, obviously this is not a great location to short. We were looking for a bounce and you know, to get a short. I took some pretty aggressive shorts that got stopped out on this move just based on some other theory, but I didn't lose hardly any money because they were very, very tight stops. So if you want to short, make sure that you, at this point in time, put in a really tight stop, because you don't want to just get your ass handed to you again. This bar down has not confirmed that we are headed back down quite yet. If we go down to, let's say, the 12-hour, all right, it's looking a little uglier. Definitely some overbought signals here. Still, this volume bar is, you know, not at the end of the day here, but it's not bigger than this one. And again, we don't have market structure, so that's just not telling us anything. This is not, you know, here we have a breakdown on MACD, at least below. It's not a divergence. So on the, the 6 hour, it's not looking great. But again, we just don't have the setup yet. So we've gone precipitously down. But even if we look at the 1 hour I was looking at before this video, you can see that maybe we might be putting it in a bottom here in MACD. This is not confirmed, but if we get a double bottom here in MACD, well, that's probably the slowing of momentum. You can see that we're getting oversold a little bit on the 1 hour here. So be careful. We might be looking for a retest or just a bounce up. If we bounce up and do not break through the old highs, that's when we can start looking at, are we going to be going back down? Are we going to be shorting? Do we have the divergences? So we're just not quite there yet, but waiting patiently, and I've been waiting patiently for this day for a long time, because I'm like, markets don't move up in one direction forever, guys, right? We don't get these moves without corrections. And the thing is, like, welcome back to the Bitcoin market, right? Like the classic Bitcoin volatility. We thought maybe the CME, CBOE was going to take some of the volatility out of it, but it really just didn't happen. I mean, like, well, maybe it did for a while, but look at these huge moves, right? This is just classic crypto market, and we have this huge gap here in the volume profile that I'm really expecting us to come back down and fill. I just don't necessarily see it happening tomorrow, okay, right? So don't be like, oh yeah, short, like the setup is not there yet. Give it a little bit of time. I do see us coming back down here, and overall, if we look at the monthly, and we look at the weekly, we're still looking pretty bullish. Like, even if we came back down here, let's say go up, down, just come back down here, and then maybe swim around, like, we can still head back up. You look at a gold chart, this is this is what happened. Of course, what happened with gold was kind of, if I remember correctly, and I can kind of put on another chart here just so that I don't have to do this from memory. Oops. We're going to go back to Gemini here. I got to click on this chart and then go to gold. And then let's, go down to the monthly so that we can see. We've got to go back. TradingView doesn't have the history. So futures potentially, let's see. Can we go all the way back? Yes. Yes, this is what we're looking for. This is when gold futures, this was all the rage. It was the new contract, right? So what we had, that huge move up, down, right? This looks almost identical to Bitcoin. And when you do a monthly, I always like to compare a monthly to a weekly on crypto. The monthly is more stock market. I gotta get rid of this. And, because you have 4 times as much trading time on a 24-hour market than you do on, open markets, stock markets. I don't know I think the futures might be traded, 24/7 technically, but the market's not really open. It's open about a quarter of the time if you look at the stock market, right? So we had down here, we had this dump into probably 78.6. I could probably draw a fib and just see. I don't have like that much room, so let's see. We take this and kind of just come down. You can see we did drop down into the reload zone. Didn't quite come to 78.6, but then we had a large bounce up. Is that going, rah bull, right? That's what we have over here. Then we had kind of a drop down, and then you can see we actually ended up getting down to 78.6 later on. So we tested these lows and then went lower. And then what's really nice is that this double bottom just came in off 78.6, and then zoom, away you go, right? To the absolute craziness. So, but this took a while to play out. If you say, okay, well, I'm going to compare monthly to daily. So the top of this peak, which is kind of in an analogy where we are, to the bottom, that's 157 bars. So, you know, in our terms, that would be 157 weeks from the top of here to the bottom of here. And that would be, what, roughly 3 years or something like that before the end of the cycle commences and we move up. Am I saying that we're going to do that? No, but that is something that we have to be wary of if we lose these lows. If we lose these lows and then eventually go down into you know, the 1,000 area, close down there monthly, you know, it might be a real long time before Bitcoin can pick itself up. I think in order to do that, we're going to have some kind of regulatory disaster. Some major countries are going to have to ban it. I don't know exactly what's going to happen. Some huge, you know, massive hack. I'm not really sure. Just because gold did this doesn't mean that Bitcoin is going to do this. It just means that, look, this pattern looks awfully familiar to this pattern, right? This one to this one, right? At least the beginnings of it. So we have to be prepared that sometimes this does happen in markets, but then eventually, look where it went. You know, in comparison, you know, we had a high over here of almost 900, and then it topped out here at like 1,900. So that would compute like a top of like $40,000 in Bitcoin. But, you know, it would also say that it would take probably 4 or 5 years to get there. So there's no rush here, okay? I think that, you know, that's why we can't FOMO here. This market will be looking for a pullback, and we're just going to have to wait for it to come in. If you're looking for shorts, you're going to have to wait for that short signal to come in. And, you know, we're just going to have to see how this plays out. If we come back down and it looks really ugly and we test the lows and go further, then, you know, you're going to have to evaluate that at the time. If we come back down and put in a polite little W and head back up, that, you know, seems to me like it would be a great buying opportunity. But for now, I'm just going to be looking for a retest of this magic line at 6,400. I don't know, by the time it comes in, it might be, you know, higher. Hopefully it's, you know, it's still in this reload zone, you know, of anywhere between, let's say, the low 7,000s to the mid 5,000s. So I hope this gives everybody a perspective of, you know, what's going on with this bloodbath, where are we today, and what you should be looking for going forward. I hope this was great value to you. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.